I used to laugh at Christians. I thought they were weak, stupid people who needed an imaginary friend to get through life. I had scientific facts, logic, and reason on my side. But then something happened that I couldn't explain away. Something that made me fall to my knees and cry out to a God I didn't believe in. And that moment changed everything. For most of my life, I was proud to call myself an atheist. Not just someone who didn't believe in God, but someone who actively fought against the idea of God. I would get into debates with religious people just to prove them wrong. I had all the arguments ready: evolution, science, the problem of evil. To me, Christians were people who couldn't handle reality. They needed fairy tales to make sense of a cruel world. I saw them as mentally weak. When they talked about feeling God's presence or answered prayers, I rolled my eyes. It was all wishful thinking and confirmation bias. I lived my life like I was the only one in control. I made my own rules, followed my own path, and answered to no one. If something good happened, it was because I worked for it. If something bad happened, it was just random chance. There was no meaning, no purpose, just existence. But deep down, something was eating at me. I had everything I thought I wanted. A good job, freedom to do whatever I pleased, intellectual superiority over those simple-minded believers. Yet I felt empty, hollow. Late at night, when I was alone with my thoughts, questions would creep in. Why did I feel so purposeless? Why did nothing satisfy me for long? Why did I feel like there was something more, even though my brain told me there wasn't? I started noticing things that bothered me. Christians I knew seemed to have this peace I couldn't understand. Even when bad things happened to them, they had this quiet strength. They talked about love and forgiveness in ways that actually seemed real, not fake. One day, my coworker invited me to church. I laughed and said no, but she didn't get offended. She just smiled and said, "I'll pray for you anyway." Something about the way she said it stuck with me. She wasn't trying to win an argument. She genuinely cared. Then life hit me hard. I lost my job, my relationship fell apart, my health started failing. All my confidence in being in control crumbled. I had nowhere to turn and no one to blame but random chance and bad luck. But the worst part wasn't the circumstances. It was the crushing weight of meaninglessness. If this is all there is, if we're just accidents in an uncaring universe, then what's the point of anything? Why keep going? I found myself researching things I never thought I would. I started reading about near-death experiences, not to debunk them, but because I was desperate for some sign that there was more. I watched debates between atheists and Christians, but this time I wasn't automatically siding with the atheists. One night, I hit rock bottom. I was sitting alone in my apartment feeling completely defeated. The silence was crushing me. I had pushed everyone away with my arrogance and anger. I had nowhere left to turn. That's when I did something I never thought I would do. I looked up at the ceiling and I spoke out loud. Not to anyone in particular, just into the emptiness. I said, "If there's anyone out there, if there's any kind of God, I need to know. I can't do this anymore." I felt stupid saying it. My rational mind was screaming at me for talking to nothing. But something inside me was so broken that I didn't care about looking foolish anymore. What happened next is something I still can't fully explain. I didn't hear a voice or see a vision, but suddenly I felt this overwhelming presence, not scary, but powerful and peaceful. Like someone had just walked into the room, except I couldn't see them. Tears started flowing before I even realized I was crying. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. Like I had been holding my breath my whole life and could finally breathe. In that moment, I knew there was a God. I knew I had been wrong about everything, and somehow I knew it was Jesus. All those Christians I had mocked were right, and I had been the fool. I fell to my knees right there in my living room. I didn't know how to pray properly, but I started talking anyway. I told God I was sorry for rejecting him. I was sorry for mocking his people. I was sorry for living like he didn't exist. I asked Jesus to forgive me. I asked him to take control of my life because I had clearly made a mess of it. I told him I didn't understand everything, but I wanted to follow him. The peace that filled me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. All the anger, all the emptiness, all the fear. It was like someone had lifted a 1,000-pound weight off my chest. That was 3 years ago. My life isn't perfect now, but it has meaning. I wake up each day knowing I have a purpose. The same circumstances that once drove me to despair now feel manageable because I know I'm not facing them alone. I started reading the Bible, something I used to mock as outdated nonsense. Now I see wisdom in every page. I joined a church surrounded by the same people I used to think were weak. Now I see their strength comes from something far greater than themselves. The biggest change is in my heart. I used to be angry all the time, fighting against everything and everyone. Now I have peace, even when things go wrong. I have hope, even in dark times. I have love for people I used to look down on. I'm not saying I have all the answers now, but I know the one who does, and that makes all the difference. If you're watching this and you're where I used to be, I get it. You think Christians are foolish. You think faith is weakness. You think you're too smart to believe in God. I thought the same thing. I had all the same arguments you probably have. I was just as convinced that I was right and they were wrong. But I'm here to tell you something you might not want to hear. You're wrong. Not because you're stupid, but because you're missing something incredible. Something that changed my entire existence. You don't have to hit rock bottom like I did. You don't have to wait until you're desperate. You can call out to God right now, wherever you are. He's waiting for you, just like he was waiting for me. I used to be the biggest skeptic you could find. Now I'm living proof that God is real, that Jesus saves, and that no one is too lost to be found. The person I was 3 years ago would have called the person I am today crazy. But here's what that old version of me didn't know, and what I'm still discovering every day about what happens when God gets hold of someone who spent years running from him.